issue with the community and social and community issues that lead to mining, like how we have dealt with it properly with respect to the environmental concerns generally. Now, by way of conclusion, I've tried to put across some policy options that we can look at with a view to taking some decisions on them. Number one, I said, to ensure that we have effective regulation of the sector. One option available to us is to establish an independent regulator in form of a minerals commission to administer and regulate the mining sector. This would allow policy matters related to the sector to be handled by the minister, while the general administration of the sector in terms of its regulations and so on will be left to the mineral commissions made up of technocrats that know the business and are devoid of political considerations. So this is one option that we can look at and with a view to adopting. The other option is to make special regulations for artisanal miners to cater for their peculiarities and dedicate a part of the Minerals and Mining Act for that purpose. Now, what has happened is that in some regimes you have what we call a segregated regime. You have a segregated regime, one for that class of miners, artisanal miners, because of their peculiarities, they cannot meet up with certain requirements that are contained in the general regime. So you segregate the regime and provide for them, like what is happening in Brazil under the Garimpo regime. So also, if we believe that artisanal miners are really contributing to this sector and we need to encourage them, we can also take the step of having special regulations made for them so that those regulations will take into cognizance their peculiarities and be able to provide an environment for them to be able to formalize their activities. We should also look at the possibility to consider whether it is desirable as a policy option to make provision for a policy specifically tailored for mineral export. That is, such policy should introduce a single window management system, as was the case during the colonial rule. Mr. Bonta has made reference to this in his presentation, and that's the point I'm trying to re-emphasize, that there's a need for us to have a single window management system in our export system. This shall demand the services of internationally certified third-party quality and quantity pre-shipment inspection agents, who would now inspect the quantity and quality of the exports and ensure that it meets the standard. This is an international best practice, and I think it's high time that we begin to use it as a way of dealing with some of our peculiarities in this environment. This shall enable government to appropriately take charge of the export of minerals in Nigeria. Another thing we need to look at is to consider whether we need to decentralize the technical departments of the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, such as the Mining Cadastral Office or the Mines Inspectorate, Mines Environmental and Compliance Department, so that they can bring their services closer to the mining communities. As it is today, it appears that they are still far removed from the various communities, and therefore the logistics of getting to those communities to really deal with the issues concerning them is quite Herculean. And so we may want to look at that. And if you have a mineral commissions in place, then again, we may want to look at the possibility of having decentralized offices maybe across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, so as to ensure that they are closer to the communities. Another one which I think is already in place now is I was recommending we should consider having a mineral and mining council comprising of relevant stakeholders at federal, state and local government councils to meet regularly to exchange views and ideas as they relate to the governance of the sector. And I believe this is a first step in this meeting, and I think such should be entrenched in our mineral legislation to ensure that there's continuity of the practice. This will ensure that there's closer relationship between the industry participants and at both federal and state and local government level for synergy. I thank you very much for your attention.
I don't think that was a very legal clap enough. Okay. Thank you. That was more befitting. Thank you, Prof. This paper is on strategies for implementation of the roadmap for national development. And it will be taken by someone who is also a professor of geology at the University of Ibadan. He's a former president of the Nigerian Mining and Geosciences Society, and also a visiting professor to many Southern African universities of the Mining Implementation Strategy Team, MIST. Professor Okunlola, welcome, sir.
Important for any sector If you don't know where you are going, you may never get there. If you don't plan well, we can criticize from morning to tomorrow, but if we don't get involved in seeing that things get done, then we'll all be moving around the circle. And that is why I think the roadmap coming at this time, meant to be fully implemented, is very important. And I can see in the last 6 months, the flurry of activities that have taken place in this sector. It's important that we criticize it. It's important that we review it. It's important that we look at it. But at the same time, it's important that we move forward. And that is the way I look at the general principle of the roadmap. Of course, the roadmap was written, let me use the word, by people from all parts of the sectors of the mining industry. The private sector, the financial sector, the development partners, those of us who are in the academia, and we formed the basis of the critique of the roadmap itself, and then even the miners. And those that my friend Ebota called the legal miners. So it was all an inclusive thing. And economists. And this document was arrived at. The next step is, how do we get strategies to implement this roadmap? One thing we need to know is that the mines implementation strategy team will not implement the roadmap. The MDAs, the stakeholders, the miners, the explorers, those who are involved in data generation, the government itself, all of us are to implement this roadmap for the purpose of advancing the mining industry. And I want to advise all of us here to go to the website of the ministry and download this roadmap. If you have a hard copy, I have a hard copy here, and I think I will appeal to the Secretariat of MIST to see that as many copies are made available. I don't know how many of us here have a copy of the roadmap. Very few. So it's important that even when we are looking at things or saying things, we must have the knowledge of what we are saying. So please go to the website, it's there, and download the roadmap. Thank you. So the roadmap represents a coherent strategy to rejuvenate the mining sector. And we can summarize it briefly as follows. Nigeria's ambition should be to create a globally competitive sector capable of contributing to wealth creation, providing jobs, and advancing our social and human security. 2, we can achieve this by focusing on using our mining assets to drive domestic industrialization initially, and then migrate to winning in global markets. Nigeria has mining assets. It's all over the place, at every level. We may not have the big ones like we have in the Cretons or the Birimians, or those who are endowed like you have in Congo, within the West African Creton, or the Kalahari Creton, and all those. But ours is even diversified. We have the advantage of size. They may be small because we're in an orogenic area, so they are dispersed. But when we look at it at every way, at every level, we can convert some of those things to mining assets. Somebody who is in Ishiagu, for example, or even let's say the fringe of Cross River, a granite occurrence, outcrop in that place is as precious as somebody who is mining gold in Niger State. Because that granite is so important for construction. The sands in Lagos, which will consume as many sands and granites and cobbles as much as possible because it's a construction melting point, the sands in Lagos is as important to the man who is constructing in Lagos as the man who is supplying barite to the oil industry. So every mineral endowment, even the clays, the ceramics, is important as a mining asset. How do you then plan this? 1, for wealth creation, 2, for employment generation, and 3, for social cohesion. I think that's the essence of the roadmap. There are timelines. Oh, what's happening? Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the timeline for the roadmap: the short term, the medium term, the long term, and forever. Let me use that word. But the mid-short term, between now and 2 to 5 years, medium term, 5 to 10 years, and after 10 years. In the short term, or even immediate, you launch the roadmap, you set up the mixed team, which has been set up, design and establish process for strategic planning, for long-term development, begin active communications and promotion of roadmap with stakeholders, finalize review of key industrial assets, identify gaps in existing training program, and make changes. I make bold to say, and I want to be controverted, that this is already ongoing. What we are doing today, communicating. You see, one major problem in the industry is opacity. When you don't communicate and people don't know what you're doing, you don't get anywhere. In the last 6 months, I have partaken in not less than about 5 stakeholders meetings, whether organized by people in the ministry or the government or even the stakeholders, with their development partners, with their mixed teams, with the mining summits, and so on and so forth. And we share ideas, we share issues. Mr. Ebota that had just come and I enjoyed his presentation, is not really a core ministry person. He's not an employee per se. But look at the ideas he has. Look at what he has brought into this. And he's already been told, now come and start implementing it. It's now part of the Mid-Diver program. And that is what we want to achieve in the midterm. So it is not an inclusive or what I call it an opaque thing. It's a contributing thing for every one of us to flow along. In the short term, to also develop strategy to utilize priority minerals, restructure and reorganize the MMSD, which I believe is ongoing and we need to be looked at closely, improve regulatory clarity on powers and duties of MDAs, incentivize financial participation of communities in mining, and so on and so on. In fact, if we begin to look at what is happening now, what we want to do in the next 2 to 5 years, and sometimes 5 to 10 years, we discover that while you are implementing one, you're already implementing what you want to do in another 3 years. And I'll come to that shortly. If you look at this particular diagram, what's the next slide, please? Please, just follow me, please. Next slide. Successful execution of a mining plan. This is where we want to be in the year 2025. That's in terms of contribution of direct GDP and indirect GDP, according to the roadmap. But I'll tell you something. If what the Mid-Diver program, and let me just, sorry to be referring to you, Ebota and his team, if they begin to implement what all the things he had highlighted, and those are the things he has to do, not just for public playing to the gallery. They are things that he has to do, that's why he's brought in, and he has agreed to do them. If all those things are done with the exports, with reorganizing the strategy, with bringing in the customs, with the SGS, and with all the strategies that they have planned, with the people in the team, the Nigeria's GDP, mining sector contribution, GDP contribution to the national GDP will not be at the level of what we are talking about in the next 8 months. And so we will have even achieved more than what we say we achieved. If we are thinking, looking at the graph and saying by 2020 we want to be maybe at 3%, I don't see why from next year, end of next year, if all those loopholes are blocked, if those structures are put in place, as in the roadmap, and they are implementing it, there's no reason why we cannot achieve a 6% contribution of GDP by the end of next year. So the important thing is to know where you're going. The important thing to do is to plan. The important thing to do is to bring in people, not just looking at only the structure within. Get all the brains that you can get in, and get, importantly, a listening government. If you have a listening governance structure, and I put it and I give it to the current ministry people, the permanent secretary and the minister. I'm not a single fan. I was more critical than Professor Garuba, and they know I always tell them the truth. But they listen. And that is why we are having all these programs. They don't only listen to people who praise them, like my Oga and friend. Garuba didn't come here to praise them. And when we were asking who are those that will talk, I said, number one, put Garuba there. Because we want to hear the truth. And then we can have people who will come in and then we add value. So all of us are part of the implementation of the roadmap. It's not for government alone. Governments will come, governments will go. Politicians will come, politicians will go. Electoral cycles will come, electoral cycles will go. But the mining sector is a marathon. And when you are running a marathon, you don't run it only with the view of only the present. You look at specific plans, even for the future. And so this is where we want to be. And we believe that we can have, for Nigeria, we have put a conservative 2x2 multiplier effect. Of course, South Africa, 3.5 and all the rest. But even with the rate we are going, if the political will is there, if this continuity is maintained, if all the policies that are now being brought in with the financial incentives, with the plan for financing and the private sector inclusiveness is purposefully followed, we will achieve more than we have set in here. A roadmap is a plan, is an implementation plan. And so the strategies must evolve to see how we get to effect this roadmap. So Nigeria has a robust mining regulatory framework, from what Prof has said. And of course, some of the areas that he had mentioned are also being looked into. And in fact, you see that in some of the presentations of the directors and all that. So these are also part of what, but presently we are warning and we are advising, especially with the state governments and even the federal government. If you tamper too much with the mining law that you have currently, you will run into trouble. Everything will just turn upside down. Please, let's be patient. Let's run this law. Let all the structures be put in place. When we have run it, we will now see some of the loopholes. And then we'll be, if we just leave it open now, there will be a lot of confusion. And nobody, even local people, will not invest in this industry. So it's important that we allow it to run. The strategic framework, where to play. We want to rebuild market confidence. We want to expand domestic oil and mineral asset processing industry and return to global oil and mineral markets at a market competitive price. I don't want to go into all the details, but the MIS was tasked with the following: identify the keys through low-cost hurdles action, provide investment advice, and I've also said the mine implementation strategy team is basically an advisory body and a nudging body. How far are we gone? We have developed an M&E. We have developed KIPs. We have developed, matrices for the ministry so that we know where you are going at every point. For example, the half-yearly report of the MIS implementation team strategy is ready, and I believe it will be submitted very soon. And see where we are. How are those programs that we have now? Which ones can be funded by budget? Which one can be funded by development partners? Which one can be funded by robust financial incentiveness and inclusiveness? And these are the things that we're advising, and we can see some of the implementation. So what are our plans? We've now divided ourselves into about 5 working groups. May I say this? The implementation strategy team may look big, but it has to be inclusive, about 26 people. And it also involves people, the miners, it involves the academia, it involves the financial sector, it involves the CBN, it involves the banking industry, and we all divided ourselves into areas of strategies that we want to see that this sector moves. The governance working group, we have a technical working group who are looking at the technical implementation and trying to develop strategies for the DGs, for the directors, for the top ministry people, the technical people who are implementing, the communication and stakeholders engagement like we are having, the finance working group, and I'll tell you some of the things that are going on right now, and the monitoring and the evaluation. So the essence of Some of these working groups is to assist the MSS in developing approach, strategy and monitoring the rescheduling and reorganization of MMSD, monitor and evaluate the improvement of the regulatory clarity roles, advise on implementing strategy plan and so on. Technical working groups, strategy and implementation criteria to utilize development of mineral exchange to schedule export like we are doing now, come up with implementation strategies to expand coverage, research of, and access to geoscience data in Nigeria. Let me give this to Geological Survey. Many of us, oh, there is no data in geological. I tell you, they have a whole lot of data. Maybe more can be done. But I want to say again that in the last 6 months, something has happened. The ministry is already developing a strategy in which data will be generated at a very fast rate, with the NGSA inclusive. Companies have put up bids for exploration. They are following due process, both local and international. They're going to the second stage, and this is not just going to involve those companies who are going to fast-track exploration of many of these commodities. Officers in the Geological Survey, geologists in the Geological Survey who are monitoring and even the background of this are going to be involved. Senior geoscientists are going to be involved even as consultants. Internal and external consultants are going to be involved. So that in the next 6 months, there will be a rapid generation of geoscience data that will be acceptable in this country. Not only that, one of the things we are putting across is that even young geoscientists who may not be employed are going to be the companies that are going to implement this are going to be encouraged to have these young geoscientists, a particular percentage that will work with them. And so they will also be the future of the geosciences. If they can't be employed by government immediately, but I know also there are plans to see that they will be involved in the data generation process. With this, there will be inclusiveness. We can have that not only rapid data generation, authentic data generation that will have also been generated both by the private sector, competent exploration companies, with local and international contributions. Thirdly, the communications and stakeholder engagement, like what we're having, they have also developed a robust plan to make sure that communications are going on. It's important to talk. I like to talk to people. Because if you don't talk to people, you will not get feedbacks. If you don't talk to people, you will not know where you are. And I believe communications is very important. And that's one thing I'm happy the ministry and the government is doing on a consistent basis. That's why I want to believe that this Mines Council is also important. When the federal government and the state governments, the commissioners, those that we have to say, oh, there are confusions here and there, licenses have been issued, they sit together, and not like my brothers in the north will say, fuska the fuska, face to face. And you look at the issues that are involved. What is happening with Mirenko? What is the situation with the mining law? What does the roadmap portray? How can you contribute? What is the essence of having special purpose vehicles? When the federal government and the states, those who are involved in state governance in the mining sector, sit down to talk, and then we provide the basis between today and tomorrow for them to do the talking with all the things we will have agreed on or the things we want them to take home, and they will sit down at policy level. No matter what, there is a policy level. You sit down at policy level and at implementation level, and there is clarity of purpose, then there will be less of confusion. But if A is doing his own this way, and you only hear on radio and television, and it seems as if it's a brick bat and it's a kind of criticism, and you don't sit together, and there will still be many more of this. The financial working group for the implementation strategy has also done quite a lot of thinking, and this is their task, but I will tell you what they have done. What have we done so far, especially that's communication, my time is going, with the financial sector. The strategy team had identified that there are a lot of money hanging here and there for the mining sector. With time, the mining sector itself does not have to rely on the budget of the government. It will all just be a bonus. It will be a bonus. This can be done. There are so many funds here and there that could be pulled together. The strategy team has people from the central bank, and we were surprised to see that there are some funds that can be harnessed. For example, export credit facilities from Nexim, real sector support facility from CBN, even for startups that we have not been actually using in the mining industry. Non-export simulation facility, natural resources development fund, the mean diver program, the SPDF, SMDF, that's the solid minerals development fund, and even private and equity venture capital, equipment leasing, export credit agencies are finished. Commercial banks, individual investors, stock exchange, vendor financing, other prepayments. People in the stock exchange have been asking questions. How can we be involved? They really have not understood the sector. There are only about 3 banks who have set up mining desks. The others are wanting to understand what's going on. And that is why I also want to applaud the government for listening to the action they took concerning the money that they are pulling together with the BOI for the mining sector. Yes, it may not be big, but something has to start somewhere. And this has to be done in a way that it will not just be seen as handouts. And just like Professor Garba said, nothing will come out of it. In this case, it has to be professionally managed. As a finance, you know you are going to the bank, it's not just again a dash money, it's a loan. And it's a low interest loan at 5%, which I think is attractive enough. And then with this, oh, you have confused me. Mr. Chairman, I'll finish. So with this, these are the things that need to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Another big round of applause. And we want to assure Prof that we will not confuse him.